Hi Mark, how are you?
Oh, very well. Sarah, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Thank you so much for joining me today on Scamp Stories. I've been so looking forward to having the opportunity to sit down and talk with you and explore your speaking topics in a lot more detail. So thank you for your time.
Well, thank you for having me and providing me with the platform.
So, why don't we dive straight in and you can start to tell us about your journey and what has sort of brought you to this moment of becoming a motivational speaker?
Yeah, my journey's been an interesting one to say the least. There was a big turning point in my life when I was severely burned, age 14, and I had to battle back from the brink of death. I died a couple of times and I had a long journey to recovery that included over 30 operations, both in Ireland where my accident happened and then back in the UK. And it's just a battle really to survive and then get my dignity back and then get my independence back. And it was a journey that really opened up the depths of my soul, and I really had to dig deep, but also a journey of great growth and a journey that not only celebrates the power of my own recovery and how I went on to thrive, but also that those around me. We very rarely suffer isolation alone, and the power of the community I had around me, I think, allowed us all to grow from a very dark situation. And it's set me off on a different path in life, one where you get a second chance. And I had an adulthood full of adventure and adding other life experiences, a lot more ups and downs. It wasn't only ups after that, but the lessons I learned very early on in my journey will enable me to have something to hang future experiences back on and add wisdom into my life. And now, 30 plus years later, I think I've got the right lived experiences, the wisdom on top of that, and I'm ready to open up and share my story and hope to inspire other people to really tap into their own stories, to find their own growth and to find resilience and positivity and be able to lead themselves through this bumpy road that we call life.
Gosh, that's amazing, and thank you for sharing that today. I think when it happened to you, you were 14, I'm right in saying. I mean, that
Yeah.
is such an incredibly young age. At what point on your sort of physical journey of recovery were you aware of this need for this inner resilience that clearly you must have had and you must have drawn on? But the thought of a 14-year-old having to tap into that and come to terms with it is quite shocking, I think, for anyone to sort of get their head around.
It is in one way. I think there's two sides to this. I think being burned on the cusp of puberty as I was at 14, your teenage years are taken away from you, and there's a hell of a lot that you're very aware that you're missing out on in life. But then on the other side of that coin, I was just about to go through the biggest or the second biggest growth spurt of my life. We have one from 2 to 5 where we absorb and we're sponges and we create the neural pathways that really make up who we are. The next one is when you're going through that, growth spurt, becoming an adult. So yes, in one way it was horrific that it happened at that age to me when, life was just opening up for me. But then also, if you look at it the other way, I was able to create all these neural pathways, overcome these mountains and roadblocks, and create character blocks, like foundations that have just now lasted me through life. So once I got through the really horrific first, couple of years of my recovery journey, suddenly you feel a little bit superhuman, and nothing else can compare to what you've been through, and everything seems just a little bit easier. I think I was lucky that, and I had a good joke about this as well, but lucky that of the character traits that I did have that I inherited from each of my parents. I joked with my mum once that I felt like I'm very lucky that I got the best of her and my dad. And my mum maybe thought there was a bit of ego coming into this. So very quickly, um, came back with, well, son, if I could have chosen one of the four of you to have gone through this, it would have been you. And we both burst out laughing. So it's really dark, right? For a mum to say that, son. But
Only a mother can say
she
that,
was
Mark.
she was keeping me real, but we both laughed about it. And that was really, really important. So even in the darkest of times, there is light there. So even though that there was really horrific things that a child should, never really have to go through, my family and my loved ones knew that I had this dark personality, this quick wit. So they were immediately playing into my strengths, knowing that I'd want to laugh about things and find the funny side in things. And that was really important. So that really helps, one get through some really, really, really dark and tough times. And going back to those character traits, that I was a gritty, competitive, kind of stubborn child, who was very inquisitive, always asking why. So I was really curious as to know, like, where is this taking me? What's going on? And I don't necessarily like being told what to do. If I think it's coming from an ingenuine place or it doesn't fit with who I am. So I was able to stand up for myself and what I believed was right for my own recovery. And I felt a little bit out of control in the early stages when I was in Ireland. But when I got back to the UK and to London, I I mean, it's easy for me to now to say back and say I consciously decided that I was going to be CEO of my own recovery. But I think I naturally just, my character traits just came to the fore. And then you could see the positive effect that was having on people like my parents, especially my mum, who's my primary carer, to take a bit of responsibility off her shoulders. And by me taking a bit more control of my own recovery, she, described her before as almost like the MD of the Mark Recovery Incorporated, or whatever it may be. She didn't have to be leading it and convincing me that I needed to go through these things. I needed to have these operations. I needed to keep my spirits up. If I could take some of that on me, then she could become more operational, almost, if you like, and go to battle for me and stand alongside me rather than having to lead me and everyone else to make sure I got the best care.
And I think that's such an interesting point because you're 14 and you're in the most immense physical pain that I don't think any other human on earth could begin to imagine or truly empathize with. And then you're thrown into this really grown up world where I imagine everything's happening around you, doctors, surgeons, everything's being talked about. At what stage did you become aware of that importance of self leadership and just taking that control?
One thing I really hate is when you're in a room and two people are talking about you and you're there. And I'm just, that is like a rag to a bull for me. And I remember this one situation. I was outside. I think I was about to get a perspex mask molding fitted, or something, with a maxillofacial unit, and sat in the waiting room outside. And this woman, the other side of my mum, starts to talk and ask questions about me, and I'm just sat there. And already my mum knew that this is something that I really, really, really didn't like. And she's like, my son is sat right there. He's well capable of answering for himself. Why don't you speak to him? And then I chimed in, and quickly she just went back into her shell. So it happened. So to realize that, that at that point that my mum really had my back and that I could, like, really lead this forward. And I'll go back to, a character trait that I had. I was probably pretty annoying as a child because I was always like, why? I just, my parents were of that era where, they grew up, a child is spoken to, you don't speak unless you're spoken to. And I'd ask why, and it was because I told you so. And I used to get that answer a lot. And rather than that, with my other character traits of being stubborn and competitive, rather than then just accepting that, I doubled down on that situation and really wanted to know. So I was immensely curious about why people were thinking things about me, and I could take the truth, the hard truth, and I wanted to know all of it and back myself that I could work through it because I just needed the information. So I made it very, very clear that I wanted to know everything that was going on, and I wanted to be at the center of all discussions, and made it clear that, or maybe I didn't make it clear. Maybe they could see the positive effect that that was having on me. So they were giving that back to me, and then I would then give more back to them in terms of recovering powerfully. So we create this really positive cycle in this relationship that we're all in this together, and having this back and forth. And it made me a better patient. It made me more patient, as a patient, and creating a culture already where I think people wanted to look after me, wanted to be around me. I think I was giving something back to them, and then they would give it back to me. And these are the lessons that I learned at that stage, which I now sort of bring into my talks about how we can self-lead. But by self-leading, we can help other people to self-lead, and then we can create incredible connections between people where individuals can be they're free to be their authentic selves, but within a community where we're all really supportive and empowering other people. And that can work in a family home, that can work in a hospital ward, that can work in a classroom, that can work in your friendship group, and that can work in an office environment and in a corporate environment. And then if it works in all those places, why can't it just work in society and community and the world at large?
I think it's such a beautiful concept, and I love the way you talk about self-leadership. And I think often what tends to happen in lots of environments that sort of break down those relationships is, insecurities and worries about where you fit in the world. And if you take that into a sort of work or a corporate setting, am I doing a good enough job? Has the boss noticed me? Am I doing the right thing? And so can you sort of expand a little bit on how the importance of working on self can just resonate outwards so that you're not so reliant on the external factors around you, and therefore it can sort of really work in that sort of team and environment of work to sort of bring a bit of harmony?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I believe that everything starts with self. And so if you realize that you're in control with the first interaction with whatever happens in your environment, then you immediately create a different mindset to start off with. So, and you realize that you have a choice of how you then react to stuff that happens around you. So it could be, so if we just take it now to just, the kind of office work environment, there may be things that happen around you, or things that people do that you think annoy you, and then will put you in a bad mood for the day. But if you just kind of flip that around, and if you then know that you are in control of that first emotional response, that it starts with you before you do that, I wouldn't want someone else put me in a bad mood for today. It's going to ruin me for the rest of the day. So my competitiveness or company was like, well, I'm not going to allow you to put me in a bad mood, because I already know that I don't want to be in a bad mood, and I think differently, and I'm going to create a positive outcome from whatever this scenario is. It's a lot easier to do that if you're much more sure of yourself and who you are. So I think it's really important that we try our best to become our authentic selves and be comfortable with that. Now, how we do that is really work on our values. We want to create a stable grounding of who we are as a person. And I did that by self-reflecting about my own journey through life, and maybe where I've come from as well. What, social dynamics I was born into, going back generations, where you come from. I really think that is a part of our story. And I realized that, my core values of freedom and connectivity, and if I based a sense of self around those core values, I felt really, really grounded and felt really comfortable with who I am. Now, if I then match that with a raised level of consciousness, so if I then realize that, if I then become self-aware about how I then interact with other people, if I'm compassionate about myself and my mistakes and learnings through life, and do all those things for myself, then I can then apply that to other people. it means that you start living outside of your ego. And if you take your ego out of the equation, then it's so much easier to create a good culture. So, I love the term that maybe Gandhi was misquoted, but Greta Thunberg took it on is, be the change that you want to see in the world. Whereas I would tweak that slightly because I think that we're looking too big in the world and we're looking at all the world's problems where, again, I want to bring it right back to self. And from that point, we build out. So I love just tweaking it and saying, be the change you want to see in your world. So it should just start with you and who's around you. And that starts with you and yourself. Then it starts with your loved ones. And then it starts with, your office, your community, and those kind of things. So creating that positive ripple effect out. And, I think this can be applied to so many situations, but especially the workplace.
I love that. Thank you. I've sort of been on my journey of sort of really connecting with myself, probably just in my 40s. So just in the last sort of couple of years, when I was sort of starting out in my 20s and in my sort of early career, it was all about working hard, playing hard, hadn't really got any concept of self. Do you think that the younger generations now are starting to identify more with these themes, or do you find that it is people that are approaching their sort of, shall we say, middle stages of their life that are starting to tap into this a bit more?
I think it's definitely more prevalent in midlife, and someone that I know rephrased midlife crisis to midlife renaissance, and I
Oh,
really like that.
yes.
So rather than looking at it as, oh my God, what have I done with my life? Why haven't I done all these things? Again, this is where compassion comes in, and you've got to show yourself compassion and to understand yourself. And I honestly think that we're supposed to make loads of mistakes when we're younger. If you're not mistaking, you're not learning. If you're not making mistakes, then you're too busy looking at other people, and other people can inspire you. But really, there is nothing more real than your own story and how you can really learn lessons by your own experiences. They're deep rooted within who you are. Um, I think the issue that we have is that we're living in this information and misinformation age, and we're exposed to too much that's going on, and we're always switched on. And I don't think we ever allow the space for to feel inspired for our true selves to emerge. And I think it's only maybe when we slow down a bit in our 40s that we allow ourselves that space to emerge. I think our teenage years are supposed to be a little bit traumatic, because I think, from my own experiences, it's good to have a bit of a bad time when you're a teenager. But the problem is that teenagers feel a bit too isolated, and it's so important to maybe have some tough times when you're younger, so you build up the character blocks. But those character blocks might be fragile unless we're within a strong community environment. So I think that the power of self, but then the power of community matched together, if it's a Venn diagram, that overlap is really, really powerful. Whether or not we should be trying to find out our true selves and our values so early on in life, I'm not so sure. I think we need to find a way to build up younger people's resilience for sure. But it's not surprising that their resilience is that way. If we look at what the younger generation have been through from the financial crash and the fallout from that, and then austerity, and then if we're just UK focused into Brexit and the financial fallout for that, and then we go into the pandemic, and across the entire decade of that as well, this growing topic of the climate emergency. It's no wonder that they're full of angst and emergency, and it's our responsibility as older generations to know that we've helped create the world that we've brought these people into. So we need to be a lot more forgiving, understanding of where they've come from, rather than man that up, because Gen X were the last resilient generation, and it's really unfair to compare generations like that. So I think we have a responsibility to to help younger people build up their resilience, but I don't necessarily, until they have enough life experiences of their own, then I just don't think they're going to figure out eventually who they are. And I don't think they're supposed to, you know. I was free and traveling around the world at 24, but I was a bit of an idiot, you know, as well. And that's okay, because through being a bit of an idiot, you know, um, you get your fingers burned a bit, excuse, the pun on that one. But and then you learn from it. And then, I think we just need to be a bit more compassionate and forgiving and understanding on the stages of life that we're going through, and be there to support people when they need it, but without judgment, allowing people to fall down and trip up. We cancel people far too much, and I think we put too many labels on ourselves, where really we should label behaviors rather than label people. Because if we label people, either we label ourselves or we label other people, suddenly you're putting a box around them, and also that label can be weaponized against that person, and then they feel like they can't get out of it. Whereas we can change our behaviors, and we can, we've got to be careful not to define ourselves too much too early on. And I think that's happening with the younger generation, but I completely understand why they're doing it, because they're trying to find their place in this world, and it's there's a lack of self-identity. Whereas if we can shift that mindset a bit and just free them up to go and explore who they are, and have the freedom to change who they are every few years if they want, that's absolutely fine.
And I think one of the big issues with this generation is, because of the digital world that we're living in, mistakes are permanent. There's this notion that your mistakes are documented and there for the world to see and look back on and trawl over. So this
Mm.
ability to be able to make mistakes and learn and grow just feels such a scary possibility, in a way that perhaps it wasn't for earlier generations.
Yeah, 100%. And that's why there's a lot of people afraid to go out there and actually find their individual authentic selves,
Mm.
because if they're part of a group, then they feel safe. Those the in-group out-group dynamics are stronger than ever at the moment, and people trying to find a tribe and a group so they feel safe within that. And then if they trip and fall down, that they know that they've got that community up, but to pick them up. But the problem is, I think, before they really understand who they really are, they're defining themselves and things, and people are afraid of making mistakes as well. There's a big reason why teenagers aren't going out, maybe getting as drunk and having fun as much as we did when we were younger in the 90s, is because there weren't camera phones around at that point, and people aren't suddenly on people's stories and is living there forever, whereas people are afraid of making a mistake like that, and again, just they're in their minds, their lives ruined. And
I'm grateful every day, Mark, that it didn't
oh
exist for me.
God, me too. I don't know if I was 30 years younger, I don't know if I'd be able to be a motivational speaker with uh um yeah, with all the photos that could have been taken of me. Um but I think that we need to just allow individualism a bit more, and just allow people to be themselves, as long as they're decent to themselves and other people around them. Who cares what people are doing? Who cares what, labels they've got? None of it matters.
And I think that's why this notion of grounding back to yourself is actually more important than ever, in a world where everyone has an opinion, everyone's expected to have an opinion, everyone's going to shout down your opinion. That it's really important to have that confidence to lean into your own values. And even if you do sort of feel that you're being attacked or criticized, that you just know that you're being true to yourself and what that looks like. And I think just expanding on that topic of resilience, which I know is something that you speak really passionately on, again, I think so much of our ability or lack of ability to be resilient is caught up in fear. And a lot of that can come from a place of trauma. Can you just reflect a little bit on your sort of journey through your horrific trauma through to the resilience that you've since found?
Yeah, for sure. Yes, I did have a base layer, as I said before, of kind of grit and determination, competitiveness. But my then my trauma was as big a T trauma as you could, imagine having. And it was just you when you find new depths of character when you're really, really challenged, and you these continuous, roadblocks, and you have to find a way around them. Otherwise, you're going to give up. But we're incredibly have this innate resilience built within us that just allows us to put one forward in front of the other. It's often up in here where the issues come. So just keep moving forward. And when I was posed with challenges early on, they were so extreme that I was like, I have to find a way around this. My back was up against the wall. So an example was when I was in Dublin, I was having dressing changes every day for 2 hours, and it was like 2 hours of torture. I'd be lowered into this huge bath, and then they put blocks and blocks of salt in. So it's been lowered into salty water and then 38% initially of my body was burned, and then they're changing all those dressings every single day. So it was absolute torture. But then I would then come back and to put back into my bed or my chair in my room. And my mum said I'd be immediately anxious about what was going to happen 22 hours later. So I was having to deal with the pain, and then I was having to deal with this anxiety and around what was about to happen. But there was another 22, hours in the day and the night to live. So I then had to find a way not to make it all about that. So you start living more in the moment, and you start enjoying the smaller things in life, and you rely on those around you to keep your spirits up, and you just find ways to laugh. And then I was creating these almost like systems, again, probably not consciously, but just to live more and more and more in the moment. And then you just deal with things as they come to it. And then if you deal with it once, it becomes easier to deal with it again, and it becomes easier to deal with it again. And with it, when it comes to the pain, you have to almost face into it. So I almost befriended pain, and rather than trying to continually take my mind off it, because I was on high meds, painkillers that, they got me addicted and stuff like that. So that wasn't really a long-term answer, and it isn't for anyone. But it's you psychologically just readjust how it is. So I think a lot of my resilience through life came out of the really extreme things that I had to learn. But again, as I said, it happened at an age where those neurons and neural pathways were just forming and forming and forming. And I think if it happened to me, 21 or 25, I would have struggled a lot more. And I just don't think I'd be the person I am today. So again, I feel blessed in a weird way that it happened to me at such an age where I was still developing. But then how do I then take my lessons of resilience and then and help other people with that? Well, most people aren't going to have to deal with the big T trauma that I had to go through, but we all suffer much smaller traumas in life. I'm not sure I like the big T little T trauma explanation. It's more of a kind of a scale for me, and it's super subjective. So what might not feel traumatic to you might feel traumatic to someone else, and that's absolutely fine. But that's why it's super important to really work on what your core values are, and to be able to fall back on yourself first and foremost. Your own being, your own well-being is your responsibility, and I really do believe that. And if we're constantly looking for people to save us, then we're in a bad position. And it's also that we blame external things too much. So if we can take responsibility for whatever happens in life, whether we're wronged or whether it's our wrongdoing, you free yourself up, and then you have that excess energy that you're not wasting on these negative thoughts that you can then pile into to understanding yourself better and your character traits and your well-being. And then you create a much more solid foundation that you just become resilient because you know yourself better. but we are social animals, so it's really important that we harness the power of community. And I look back at my own recovery, and it was the relationship that I had with myself and then with other people that was magic. It really, really was. You know, when I couldn't carry myself, I had people who would carry me. But then when I didn't need carrying, then I was encouraged to use my own two legs to walk. So we got to make sure that we don't become too self-centered, and we understand that we have these social contracts with other people, and that we should also help people as much as people are helping us, but help them to be their own authentic selves. You know, I didn't want people coming and giving me pity. I didn't want sustained sympathy. You know, they were checks I couldn't cash. You know, I need people to make me believe that I was doing a really good thing, but then also that the people around me made me realize that I was adding value to their lives. And that was incredible. And when you know that what you're doing is inspiring and improving other people's lives, it's like a shot in the arm of resilience. And so you're playing a part in your own life, but then how does your part play within a culture, within a community? And I talked about this earlier, you create this positive cycle, and together just become more resilient as a group, you know, because it wasn't just me, it was my family going through this. You know, this was the biggest trauma that happened in all my family's lives as well. And two older siblings at university, and you know, a younger sister who effectively became a carer of me overnight and had to become an adult at 11 years old. My mum having to give up work to become my full-time carer. My dad then getting made redundant from a job 17 hours a day. Did they get down about things? No, we just stuck together as a family. And then my mum would be using the car to take me to physio in a day. My dad would be going out minicabbing at night, 7 days a week to earn the money with two older siblings at university. I look back now and just like, how do we get through it? But we did, and we had this shared sense of resilience, and we had an incredible support unit around us that just lifted us up, and we felt the beacons of hope within our community, and that just makes you feel amazing. So there was this beautiful cycle that happened. And so it's that what I really want to get across in my talks is that dynamic between how we connect with ourselves, and then how we connect with other people, and then how other people connect back to us, and then how we spread that out. And as I said, that plays into so many situations in life and creates really good culture. And I just think it's what, you know, what individuals and what the world needs right now.
So, Mark, I love the way you talk about that connection between self, your immediate family, and then also the wider community around you, that were those three, the fusion of those three things, it feels like was really the essence and the heart of your recovery journey. In a world now where we're more connected and switched on than ever, how do you think we've needed to sort of change our understanding of connection? And has it changed? And are we missing anything now in this new sort of 24/7 switched on world?
Yeah, I think you just nailed the problem right at the end of your sentence there. It's a 24/7 always switched on world. We're always connected to the matrix or whatever. And I think that creates a level of always on stress. Now, it may only be minimal, but it's there. The fact that we know our phone's in our pocket and every so often we're going for it, even by saying no to it and having that strength, we're using up a bit of energy, and we're getting a little bit stressed, and a bit of cortisol gets pumped around our body. And I think that's causing a lot of chronic illnesses in the world. So physically, I think it's really affecting us. And I think it's more important than ever that we create space, and so that we can connect with ourselves better, we can connect with the world around us. I think the more and more we're always on, and the more we're always got this busy life in urban environments, I think the more important it is to create space to switch off, to connect with nature, and really realize, you know, where we came from in the first place, rather than just being swept up in this, you know, ultra modern, fast paced, consumer driven society that we live in.
think it's such a good point that you make, that we now need to actively find space. And that really is concerning. Like, even if you're just in a queue at the supermarket, I find myself automatically reaching for the phone to just make sure I'm doing something. And I really have to, as you say, actively take action to just disconnect and find that space and be happy in my own head. And I don't really know what the answer is, but it's just something that I'm just more and more aware of and find more and more concerning in this same time, when knowing that centering to yourself is just so important.
Yeah, I try to create sort of positive habits and to allow myself to become more present in any situation. And the barometer I know for me, if that's working, is whether or not I get road rage or not. So I used to get road rage a lot, you know, a lot, and feel like it was my place to tell everyone else what they were doing wrong. Whereas now I just don't care. It's like if someone cuts me up, oh, I don't know, they could have been having a bad day, but I'm not going to let them ruin my day. So, and I get to that sort of place by, yeah, having just trying to be more mindful. And, I know it's a very buzzy thing at the moment, but it's a great way for me to maintain a sense of calm and a sense of being able to snap into the present at any moment. So again, not doubling up too much on what we're doing. When you're doing something, enjoy it. So try and have, one meal a day where you're just having being in the moment and sitting down, and the only thing you're doing is eating, even if it's just one meal. I like to have a morning routine where I read, maybe do a little bit of journalism and breath work, and 10-minute meditation. It takes 40 minutes tops, but it's my time at the beginning of the day. And I think I heard this on a podcast. I think it was on Rangan Chatterjee's podcast, and he was talking with someone who said that do whatever you can do first thing in the morning that takes you upstream, so that the rest of the day it feels like you're just floating downstream.
Right.
So for me, and it could be just reading, it could be going for a run, it could be meditation, it could be whatever it is that you want to do. And for me, it's just having that moment to read and meditate and breath work and just calming myself down. And then I just go out with a sense of calm into the world and just float downstream the rest of the day. And days that I do that and do some exercise are always better days. But I also, for me, I feel like that they're a maintenance thing. So they're not the answers in and as themselves. I think if you still don't understand like who you are, what your authentic place is, what is your place within your world, then I feel like you're just papering over the cracks.
Mm.
It's important to do the foundational work and really try and understand who you are and what your values are. That gives you that solid foundation, and you get to a place of enlightenment, which is really nice. And then mindfulness practices for me just maintain that state of mind rather than create that state of mind for me.
Yeah, I think that's right. In terms of sort of post-traumatic growth, which I know you talk and are very incredibly well informed on, I think, what can people do if part of the trauma in their background has just led them to a place of anxiety and fear around always thinking that you're waiting for something awful to happen? What is the key, do you think, in terms of that post-traumatic growth to make sure that you sort of can manage that fear and anxiety and move beyond that?
Um, for me personally, it was that I turned a sense of unfairness and this feeling of unfairness, that why should this happen to me,
Mm.
early on, and that self-pity and feeling like that, the world's unfair. And I used to have a lot of FOMO before my accident and be really jealous of what other people had and I didn't have. And and that just kind of intensified a bit more immediately post accident. But then as I went through my recovery, I started to let those things that I felt like I was missing out of kind of disappear. And then I started to think that well, if this is unfair, and if God or the universe or whatever, other power you believe in, I felt like I was owed, and I could have just sat there in self-pity and hopefully expecting things to balance out in my life, or I can have this head up attitude and look around and try and spot opportunities and go and get them because I feel like I'm owed some back. So I wanted to even up the score with the universe. And I got to university, which was 5 years after my accident, so I made this miraculous recovery, managed to stay in my school year, get my GCSEs and A levels, and then I got to university and I had this moment where my parents dropped me off and I closed my front door to my halls and I stood there in the hallway and I just got this all over body reaction, like
Mm.
all over, like every single hair in my body standing up. And I've only had that once since, and which I'll explain to you in a minute. And then in that moment, I was just like, "You've done it, kid. Wow, you should be really proud of yourself. No one believed that you could ever get to this place." The picture that was being painted for me by a lot of adults around me is that my life was just going to be full of problems and hurdles and obstacles. And it's like sometimes it was a little bit of a negativity from certain people where I was just like, I got a second chance at life. And I can think, yeah, okay, more traumas could be around. And oh my God, and how bad it is to have traumas. But I was thinking, you know what, maybe I've had my fill. And maybe I'm just doing some good luck. And a lot of people just saying I'm a real lucky bugger in life. I feel like sometimes I got all my bad luck out of the way with in one go. Um, but I was a go-getter and I didn't just expect good things to come from me because I had bad times. That is a negative mindset. I wanted to be positive, and I was like, I feel like the universe has owed me, but I can't trust the universe to bring it to my doorstep. I need to go out there and get it. So every single opportunity that I could jump on board to create new lived experiences, positive lived experiences, and Viktor Frankl talks about this in his book, A Man's Search for Meaning, which is a brilliant book to read. And I don't exactly remember how he explained it, but it was about justifying your trauma. So you've had whatever traumatic experience that you've had, as big as mine, or it could be a small one. After that, go out there and just try and even up the score. Go out there and justify it. Some of the best periods of my life have been straight after some of the worst. And they say that the sky is darkest just before the dawn. And when that happens, it's like you're an underdog and you're coming from a bit further back. And that sense of momentum into life, you can really carry you to great heights. But you've got to be conscious of it. And some of the best things have happened when in life, not getting a placement at university, being told I had too much empathy to work in the city. And thank God that happened to me because it really gutted me at the time. But then the door that opened was a door that allowed me to go traveling, which is like the biggest education I've ever had in my life. Breaking up with, the one serious girlfriend I had as a teenage, sorry, as an adult, then suddenly I was able to throw myself into my poker media work, which created another decade plus long adventure around the world. So if those bad things hadn't happened to me, then those good things wouldn't have happened. But because of the experiences I had when I was younger, I knew that when I was coming out of a bad period or any kind of trauma, I was going to go and get mine. And not that I was going to knock other people down along the way. It was just I'm still a good member of society, but I wanted to just really, 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 really go and get mine. So I described it before as running into life. So rather than running away from my trauma, I was running into life. And it took about 30 years, for me to keep running into life. And then I got to Wales. I went to Wales at the beginning of 2022, and I just decided that I was going to leave a company that I founded, a video production company 5 years before. I think of the back of the pandemic, it slowed down. I was self-reflecting of my life and I was looking at all the adventures that I'd had in the 30 years since my accident, and then in 25 years since that moment at university where I felt like I was at the starting blocks, where I was beginning to run into life. And I was driving out of Wales, realizing that I didn't know what the future held, but something good was going to happen. And I got that all over body reaction again. And I realized that at that moment that that was me stopping running into life, just in terms of evening up the score with the universe, with all the traumas I had in my teenage years. And now it was a time to stop, look back, reflect, and how can I create a life where I can share those experiences and help other people understand their own experiences, without it taking value away from my life. You know, for years and years and years, my mum was like, when are you going to write a book? When are you going to share your story? You know, it's like you're living life for the second time already. And I was like, I'm not ready. I'm not ready. I'm not ready. And then I called her on the way back from Wales, and I said to her, yeah, I'm ready now. And she was like, son, I've been waiting 20 years for this phone call. You go and do it. So, and that's led me to now wanting to, you know, share my story and help people understand their stories. And but I'm doing this for me, and for me first and foremost. You know, it all starts with self. And if this speaker journey wasn't adding value to my life, then I wouldn't be doing it, because that is that's just going to bring you down at some point. Whereas this is adding value to my life, and hopefully I can help people add value to their lives as well.
Well, Mark, thank you so much. I can't tell you the value that you've added to my life, not just through this conversation, but having been lucky enough to have many other sort of similar conversations with you. So I'm very, very excited to see where your speaking journey takes you.
Oh, bless you. Thank you very much. And I'm excited to be on this journey with you, and we're gonna go and get some together.